They told you God changed. They told you truth evolved. They told you Israel was gone. They lied.
The God of the Bible does not change. His covenant does not expire, and his people were never forgotten. This channel exists for one reason: to call Judah back.
We teach scripture without apology. We expose deception without fear. We speak what others won't. Scripture, identity, obedience, prophecy, exodus. This is not religion.
This is remembrance.
If you feel the pull, if you hear the call, if you know this world is not your home, you're not crazy.
I don't trust the church or government, Democrat, Republican, my Messiah, Black Nazarene, darker than my own skin. I don't trust the church or government, Democrat, Republican, my mighty one is Yahuah. I put my trust in him. I don't trust the church or government, Democrat, Republican, my Messiah, Black Nazarene, darker than my own skin. I put my trust in him. Yahuah, hold my center. Babylon is falling. Watch the wicked crumble, tremor. Ears to the east, they calling. I hear Swahili in the wind, but I study, I breathe, so I know where my blood begin. Give us free like I'm a star. This a mutiny blind. Refuse to see my people hate their heritage. They rather take the Greek. Sorcerers got the stage, and prophets buried underneath. Oh, the church is deaf. She covered both her ears when an Israelite speak. They wanna spit the weak. America got blood on the leaves. She got blood on the land. She wash and wash, but the stain's still in her hands. Babylon has fallen, fallen. I put my trust in him, trust in him. Babylon has fallen, fallen. Yahuah is my shield, my shield. I don't trust the church, no. I don't trust the state, no. Babylon has fallen, fallen. His truth don't shake. Why call me racist? I'm asking what they taught. Was it me who lied, or the picture that they bought said the son of the Most High came with foreign skin, bloody bone of my bone and skin of my skin? So why you murdering my peers? Why you slaying my fam? Don't you know we Abraham's seed? Don't you know who I am? Never forget Santo, they gun down pop. Tell me when the police violence in T-ville gon' stop. Blue lights spin the block and the mother lose her breath. Every time they pull up, it feel like a sentence to death. The youth carry the streets while the elders hold grief, and the ones with the mic keep silence in the feast. Sorcerers get crowned while the righteous get tried, but I've seen too much mercy to bow to their lies. Babylon has fallen, fallen. I put my trust in him, trust in him. Babylon has fallen, fallen. Yahuah is my shield, my shield. I don't trust the church, no. I don't trust the state, no. Babylon has fallen, fallen. His truth don't shake. If I'm left in the fire, still I won't bend. If they close every door, he'll open again. From the dust to the drum, from the bruise to the praise, we were made to remember and stand in these days. Babylon has fallen, fallen. I put my trust in him, trust in him. Babylon has fallen, fallen. Yahuah is my shield, my shield. I don't trust the church, no. I don't trust the state, no. Babylon has fallen, fallen. His truth don't shake. I don't trust the church or government, Democrat, Republican, my Messiah, Black Nazarene, darker than my own skin. I don't trust trust the church or government, Democrat, Republican. My mighty one is Yahuah. I put my trust in him.
Everything you've been taught about the nations may be incomplete. For centuries, we've been told that the knowledge of Yahuah began with Israel. But what if scripture tells a much older story? Before Israel, before Abraham, before Moses, before Mount Sinai, before Israel became a nation, who worshipped Elyon? Who called upon his name? Who taught righteousness? The Watchers.
The ancient light guides our spirits tonight.
The rebellious angels didn't originally fall from heaven. They were sent. In the book of Jubilees, chapter 4, verse 15 reads, "The angels of Yahuah descended on the earth, those who are named the Watchers, that they should instruct the children of men, and that they should do judgment and uprightness on the earth." Jubilees chapter 5 verse 6 reads, "And against the angels whom he had sent upon the earth he was exceedingly wroth, and he gave commandment to root them out of all their dominion. And he bade us to bind them in the depths of the earth, and behold, they are bound in the midst of them, and are kept separate." The scriptures tell us Enoch walked with Elohim, but have you ever stopped to ask, who is he teaching? Enoch teaches the nations. The book of Jasher, chapter 3, verse 22 through 26 reads, "And the day came when Enoch went forth, and they all assembled and came to him. And Enoch spoke to them the words of Yahuah, and he taught them wisdom and knowledge. And they bowed down before him, and they said, May the king live, may the king live. And in some time after, when the kings and princes and the sons of men were speaking to Enoch, and Enoch was teaching them the ways of Elohim, behold, an angel of Yahuah then called unto Enoch from heaven, and wished to bring him up to heaven to make him reign there over the sons of Elohim, as he had reigned over the sons of men upon earth. When at that time Enoch heard this, he went and assembled all the inhabitants of the earth, and taught them wisdom and knowledge, and gave them divine instructions, Torah. And he said to them, I have been required to ascend into heaven. I therefore do not know the day of my going. And now therefore I will teach you wisdom and knowledge, and will give you instruction, Torah, before I leave you, how to act upon earth whereby you may live. And he did so. And he taught them wisdom and knowledge, and gave them instruction, Torah. And he reproved them, and he placed before them statutes and judgments to do upon earth. And he made peace amongst them, and he taught them everlasting life, and dwelt with them some time, teaching them all these things.
I have been required to ascend, but I leave you with this wisdom to live by.
The book of Jasher, chapter 3, verse 28 through 31 reads, And they told Enoch what they had seen, and Enoch said to them, On my account does this horse descend upon earth. The time is come when I must go from you, and I shall no more be seen by you.
On my account does this horse descend upon earth.
And the horse descended at that time and stood before Enoch. And all the sons of men that were with Enoch saw him. And Enoch then again ordered a voice to be proclaimed, saying, Where is the man who delighted to know the ways of Yahuah his Elohim? Let him come this day to Enoch before he is taken from us. And all the sons of men assembled and came to Enoch that day. And all the kings of the earth with their princes and counselors remained with him that day. And Enoch then taught the sons of men wisdom and knowledge, and gave them divine instruction, Torah. And he bade them serve Yahuah and walk in his ways all the days of their lives, and he continued to make peace amongst them. The book of Jasher, chapter 4, verse 2 through 3 reads, And when Enoch had ascended into heaven, all the kings of the earth rose and took Methuselah his son, and anointed him, and they caused him to reign over them in the place of his father. And Methuselah acted uprightly in the sight of Elohim, as his father Enoch had taught him. And he likewise during the whole of his life taught the sons of Adam's seed wisdom, knowledge, and the fear of Elohim. And he did not turn from the good way either to the right or to the left. But in the latter days of Methuselah, the sons of Adam's seed turned from Yahuah. They corrupted the earth. They robbed and plundered each other, and they rebelled against Elohim. They transgressed, and they corrupted their ways, and would not hearken to the voice of Methuselah, but rebelled against him. The book of Jasher, chapter 4, verse 15 through 16 reads, And the child Noah grew up and was weaned, and he went in the ways of his father Methuselah, perfect and upright with Elohim. And all the sons of Adam's seed departed from the ways of Yahuah in those days, as they multiplied upon the face of the earth with sons and daughters. And they taught one another their evil practices, and they continued sinning against Yahuah. If Noah was called a preacher of righteousness, who was hearing his message? If the nations never knew Yahuah, how could they reject him? The book of Jasher, chapter 5, verse 6 through 11 reads, And after the lapse of many years, in the 480th year of the life of Noah, when all those men who followed Yahuah had died away from amongst the sons of men, and only Methuselah was then left, Elohim said unto Noah and Methuselah, saying, Speak ye, and proclaim to the sons of men, saying, Thus saith Yahuah, Return from your evil ways and forsake your works, and Yahuah will repent of the evil that he declared to do to you, so that it shall not come to pass. For thus saith Yahuah, Behold, I give you a period of 120 years. If you will turn to me and forsake your evil ways, then will I also turn away from the evil which I told you, and it shall not exist, saith Yahuah. And Noah and Methuselah spoke all the words of Yahuah to the sons of men day after day, constantly speaking to them. But the sons of men would not hearken to them, nor incline their ears to their words, and they were stiff-necked. And Yahuah granted them a period of 120 years, saying, If they will return, then will Elohim repent of the evil, so as not to destroy the earth.
Your hearts are heavy with sin, and your ways are wicked. Repent, for the time of judgment is upon you.
The book of Jasher, chapter 5, verse 19 through 24 reads, And Lamech, the father of Noah, died in those days. Yet verily he did not go with all his heart in the ways of his father. And he died in the 195th year of the life of Noah. And all the days of Lamech were 770 years, and he died. And all the sons of men who knew Yahuah died in that year before Yahuah brought evil upon them. For Yahuah willed them to die, so as not to behold the evil that Elohim would bring upon their brothers and relatives, as he had so declared to do. In that time Yahuah said to Noah and Methuselah, Stand forth and proclaim to the sons of men all the words that I spoke to you in those days. Peradventure they may turn from their evil ways, and I will then repent of the evil and will not bring it. And Noah and Methuselah stood forth and said in the ears of the sons of men all that Elohim had spoken concerning them. But the sons of men would not hearken. Genesis chapter 6, verse 11 through 12. And the earth was corrupt before Elohim, and the earth was filled with violence. And Elohim looked upon the earth and saw that it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. The book of Jasher, chapter 5, verse 25 through 29 reads, "And it was after this that Yahuah said to Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me on account of their evil deeds. And behold, I will destroy the earth. And do thou take unto thee gopher wood, and go to a certain place and make a large ark, and place it in that spot." Asher chapter 6, verse 16 through 25 reads, "And all the sons of men that were left upon the earth became exhausted through evil on account of the rain, for the waters were coming more violently upon the earth, and the animals and beasts were still surrounding the ark. And the sons of men assembled together, about 700,000 men and women, and they came unto Noah to the ark. And they called to Noah, saying, Open for us that we may come to thee in the ark, and wherefore shall we die? And Noah with a loud voice answered them from the ark, saying, Have you not all rebelled against Yahuah, and said that he does not exist, and therefore Yahuah brought upon you this evil, to destroy and cut you off from the face of the earth? Is not this the thing that I spoke to you of 120 years back? And you would not hearken to the voice of Yahuah, and now do you desire to live upon earth? And they said to Noah, We are ready to return to Yahuah, only open for us that we may live and not die. And Noah answered them, saying, Behold, now that you see the trouble of your souls, you wish to return to Yahuah. Why did you not return during these 120 years which Yahuah granted you as the determined period? But now you come and tell me this on account of the troubles of your souls. Now also Yahuah will not listen to you, neither will he give ear to you on this day, so that you will not now succeed in your wishes. And the sons of men approached in order to break into the ark, to come in on account of the rain, for they could not bear the rain upon them. And Yahuah sent all the beasts and animals that stood round the ark, and the beasts overpowered them and drove them from that place. And every man went his way, and they again scattered themselves upon the face of the earth. Jubilees 5, verse 19. And as for all those who corrupted their ways and their thoughts before the flood, no man's person was accepted save that of Noah alone. For his person was accepted on behalf of his sons, whom Elohim saved from the waters of the flood on his account. For his heart was righteous in all his ways, according as it was commanded regarding him, and he had not departed from anything that was ordained for him. Jubilees 7 verse 25 reads, And Yahuah destroyed everything from off the face of the earth, because of the wickedness of their deeds, and because of the blood which they had shed in the midst of the earth, he destroyed everything. Jubilees chapter 7 verse 20 reads, And in the 28th Jubilee, 1324 to 1372 AM, Noah began to enjoin upon his sons' sons the ordinances and commandments and all the judgments that he knew. And he exhorted his sons to observe righteousness, and to cover the shame of their flesh, and to bless their Creator, and honor father and mother, and love their neighbor, and guard their souls from fornication and uncleanness and all iniquity.
We must cover the shame of our flesh, and we must honor father and mother.
Flavius Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, chapter 4, verse 1 through 2 reads, Now the sons of Noah were three, Shem, Japheth, and Ham, born 100 years before the deluge. These first of all descended from the mountains into the plains and fixed their habitation there, and persuaded others who were greatly afraid of the lower grounds on account of the flood, and so were very loath to come down from the higher places to venture to follow their examples. Now the plain in which they first dwelt was called Shinar. Elohim also commanded them to send colonies abroad for the thorough peopling of the earth, that they might not raise seditions among themselves, but might cultivate a great part of the earth and enjoy its fruits after a plentiful manner. But they were so ill instructed that they did not obey Elohim, for which reason they fell into calamities, and were made sensible by experience of what sin they had been guilty. For when they flourished with a numerous youth, Elohim admonished them again to send out colonies. But they, imagining the prosperity they enjoyed was not derived from the favor of Elohim, but supposing that their own power was the proper cause of the plentiful condition they were in, did not obey him. Nay, they added to this their disobedience to the divine will, the suspicion that they were therefore ordered to send out separate colonies, that being divided asunder, they might the more easily be oppressed. Now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of Elohim. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man and of great strength of hand. He persuaded them not to ascribe it to Elohim, as if it was through his means they were happy, but to believe that it was their own courage which procured that happiness. He also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of Elohim, but to bring them into a constant dependence on his power. He also said he would be revenged on Elohim if he should have a mind to drown the world again. For that he would build a tower too high for the waters to be able to reach, and that he would avenge himself on Elohim for destroying their forefathers. Jasher chapter 9 verse 31 through 32 reads, "And they built the tower in the city, and they did this thing daily until many days and years were elapsed. And Elohim said to the 70 angels who stood foremost before him, to those who were near to him, saying, Come, let us descend and confuse their tongues, that one man shall not understand the language of his neighbor. And they did so unto them." Jubilees chapter 10 verse 20 through 25 reads, "And they began to build, and in the 4th week they made brick with fire, and the brick served them for stone, and the clay with which they cemented them together was asphalt, which comes out of the sea and out of the fountains of water in the land of Shinar. And they built it. 43 years were they building it. Its breadth was 203 bricks, and the height of a brick was the third of one. Its height amounted to 5,433 cubits and 2 palms. And the extent of one wall was 13 stadia, and of the other 30 stadia. And Yahuah our Elohim said unto us, Behold, they are one people, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be withholden from them. Let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech, and they may be dispersed into cities and nations, and one purpose will no longer abide with them till the day of judgment. And Yahuah descended, and we descended with him to see the city and the tower which the children of men had built. And he confounded their language, and they no longer understood one another's speech, and they ceased then to build the city and the tower. For this reason the whole land of Shinar is called Babel, because Yahuah did there confound all the language of the children of men, and from thence they were dispersed into their cities, each according to his language and his nation. Sirach 17 verse 17 through 18 reads, For in the division of the nations of the whole earth he set a ruler over every people. But Israel is Yahuwah's portion, whom being his firstborn he nourisheth with discipline, and giving him the light of his love doth not forsake him. Targum of Jonathan, Deuteronomy 32 verse 8. When the Most High made allotment of the world unto the nations which proceeded from the sons of Noah, in the separation of the writings and languages of the children of men at the time of the division, he cast the lot among the 70 angels, the princes of the nations, with whom is the revelation to oversee the city. Even at that time he established the limits of the nations according to the sum of the number of the 70 souls of Israel who went down into Mizraim. What if Torah didn't begin at Sinai? What if Sinai was a renewal of laws mankind had already received from Adam to Seth to Enoch to Noah, long before Israel ever stood at the mountain? But then everything changed. The nations abandoned the ways of Yahuah. Idolatry replaced righteousness. The truth became corruption. And the world that once knew the Most High turned away from him. Then came the division. The Most High divided the nations on setting their boundaries, appointing heavenly rulers over them, a moment that would shape the course of human history. But here's the question almost no one asks. If the nations were divided, who taught them before they were divided? If Yahuah judged them, didn't they first have to know his ways? Then, out of a world that had forgotten him, Yahuah called one man, Abraham, not to create truth, but to preserve it. Not because no one had ever known Yahuah, but because the nations had turned away from him. Tonight, we're opening ancient Hebrew manuscripts, the Torah, the prophets, the Dead Sea Scrolls, Enoch, Jubilees, and forgotten writings that preserve a history many have never been taught. What if Israel wasn't the beginning, but the restoration? What if the nations once worshipped Elyon, knew Yahuah, kept his commandments, and then abandoned them? The evidence has been waiting, hidden in plain sight. Isaiah 24 verse 1 through 6 reads, "See, Yahuah is making the earth empty and making it waste, and shall overturn its surface, and shall scatter abroad its inhabitants. And it shall be, as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the female servant, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the creditor, so with the debtor. The earth is completely emptied and utterly plundered, for Yahuah has spoken this word. The earth shall mourn and wither, the world shall languish and wither. The haughty people of the earth shall languish, for the earth has been defiled under its inhabitants, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinances, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse shall consume the earth, and those who dwell in it be punished. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth shall be burned, and few men shall be left." Jeremiah 16 verse 19 through 21 reads, "O Yahuah, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction. The Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, Surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. Shall a man make gods unto himself, and they are no gods? Therefore, behold, I will this once cause them to know, I will cause them to know mine hand and my might, and they shall know that my name is Yahuah." Tobit 14 verse 6 through 7 reads, "Then all the nations in the world will come back to Elohim. They will worship him as the only true Elohim and give up the idols that led them into false worship. The nations of the world will praise the everlasting Elohim by doing what he demands." Psalms 86 verse 9, "All nations whom thou hast made shall come and worship before thee, O Yahuah, and shall glorify thy name." How did the nations worship Yahuah before Israel? The answer doesn't just change history, it changes how you read the entire Bible. Let's uncover the forgotten history they never told you. So this is part 3, continuing on. Was the Torah only offered to Israel? And is Israel the only nation that knew Elohim? If so, then is Yahuah just for judging the nations according to a law that was never offered to them? What was the original faith of the ancient Israelites, right? So that's the journey we've been going on, right? We've been going over, starting from Bereshit in the beginning, from the first patriarch of Kanok, Enoch, going down to, Shem, to Abraham, and we jumped a little bit to Moshe and so forth, but we still gonna walk this thing out and see what was going on, right? What did they believe? What priesthood was here before Levite even stepped on the scene, right? And what was the understanding of the culture? What was the understanding of the mindset of these patriarchs that were carrying this priesthood and teachings throughout the nations, until we get to even Yaakov and the 12 patriarchs of the 12 tribes of Israel, right? So that's what we've been going over. Today, we're going to be touching more about, we're going to be getting into some history today,
because when we're going over ancient culture and everything, I like to get historical understanding and archaeology to prove the factual things that we read within the Torah, within the Tanakh, just so we can have some concrete evidence that is alongside with the scriptures. And again, disclaimer of the information and data in this class is for informational purposes. Information shared in this class is solely for general interest. All right, the information provided through scripture should never be used without studying, praying, and or fasting on your own. The lesson that is taught is for supported learning in Torah. Right. So the information I'm going over, you guys can, go and do your research as well and find this stuff out. Because we're touching about history and what did the neighboring nations around that area where Israel is, what was their understanding of who the Most High was, right? People even know the Most High. Did he even reveal himself to these people? So we're going to touch on that today. Yahuah willing, we'll see how far we get. So we're picking up where we left off last Shabbat. Again, these are the resources that we're using. We're using the Brown Drivers Briggs Hebrew Lexicon. We'll be in the Sefer and the Etymological Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew. Thayer's Greek New Testament lexicon as well. We may touch on the Targums today. We may get in the pseudepigrapha. But for sure, we're going to be in the Ritual and Cult at Ugarit and the Dead Sea Scrolls. All right. So we're going to open up here in 1 Kings 20, verse 23. This is Yahuah is a mighty one of the hills. All right.
All right. First Malachi chapter 20, verse 23. And it says, and the servants of the sovereign king of Aram, Syria, said to him, their gods, mighty ones, are gods, mighty ones of the hills. This is that they were stronger than we, but let us fight against them in the plain. Are we not stronger than they?
Okay. So notice that they're saying this is Syria and they're going to war with Israel right here, right? And they're saying, oh, their mighty one is a mighty one of the hills, right? Meaning, so in ancient times, the mighty ones of the powers, we went over, a couple of Shabbats ago, how there were 70 sons of El, and they were called mighty ones or gods, right? And they were allotted portions of the nations that they ruled over, right? And these 70 sons, they were the higher powers. These were the ones that govern nations, and they would meet them on these high places that they call mountaintops. They weren't like these other powers that were in the valleys, right? But they were these powers that stood at the mountaintops. And when you get at the mountaintop, you would see this assembly of these mighty ones or these gods, and they would convene there. They would meet there. They would, have certain court and so forth, and on matters concerning the earth, right? So each nation had a mighty one that they would go to, and then there were these other lesser mighty ones or lesser powers, but they didn't control the things that these higher ones did. So this is Syria, and remember Syria, that's going to be a main focus today in the lesson today. But when you look at that word hills, it's the Hebrew word har, right? And it just means a mountain or range of hills, a hill country or mountain, all right? We're going to look at Jubilees chapter 8, 19, because let's see if Yahuah is a mighty one of the hills, right? Jubilees 8, verse 19.
Jubilees 8:19, and it says, and he knew that the Garden of Eden is the Kadesh of the Kadesh, and that the dwelling of Yahuah in the Mount Sinai, the center of the desert wilderness, the Mount Zion, the center of the navel of the earth. These three were created of the Kadesh places facing each other.
So Yahuah has set apart places. He has 3 set apart places, right? Now in Garden of Eden, there was a mountain. There was a mountain where Adam was created on. This is even Ezekiel where it says that you were on the Mount of Elohim. You was in the Garden of Elohim. When he's talking to the cherub, right? He stood, before the stones of fire and so forth, and then he was cast down. So you have that mountain, and then you have Mount Sinai, which is another mountain that Yahuah dwells on. He dwells at the top of the mountain. That's why when he came down, you saw the fire on the top of the mountain. Moshe had to go up, right? and meet him there. And then the other one is Mount Zion. These are his 3 places that he dwells, and he dwells at the mountaintops. All right. Jubilees chapter 4, verse 26.
And the word says, for Yahuah has 4 places on the earth, the Garden of Eden, and the Mount of the East, Horeb, and the mountain of which thou art this day, Mount Sinai and Mount Zion, which will be sanctified in the new creation for the sanctification of the earth. Though it will be the earth be sanctified from all its guilt and uncleanliness through the out of the generations of this world.
Cain, right? So these are 4 places. Mount Horeb and Mount Gerizim was where the covenant of the blessings and the curses was introduced, right? This is another dwelling of Yahuah. So he dwells on these mountains, on these hills, all right? And there's certain locations within this area in the Levant that we're going to go over, because he's the mighty one in this territory. So when you come into that territory, you see he's dealing with certain people, all right? Psalms 27, verse 5.
And the word says, for in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion, in the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me upon a rock.
So he's going to hide us in a time of trouble. Is during the tribulation period, where he tells us, if you are within my borders, within my land, he's going to protect us, right? He's going to hide us from the outpouring of his wrath, if you will, during the tribulation period. But this is for the remnant that make it, right? The remnant that's where they're supposed to be. So notice that on this rock is his mountain, and we know Mount Zion is where we're going to meet him face to face, right? So on this rock, this is where everything is going to be renewed. So he has these set apart places. So this is why these Syrians were researching. They were like, we got to understand who we fighting and who is their power, who's their mighty one. Because again, all the nations had mighty ones. But among the 70 sons of El, Yahuah is the eldest son. He's the firstborn. He's Yahuah of hosts, the captain of Yahuah's army. He's the greater power out of all the 70 sons of El. And these people are coming to know him by him fighting against them or their powers. Let's look at 1 Kings 20, verse 28.
1 Kings 20, 28. And there came near a man of Elohim and spoke to the sovereign of El and said, thus says Yahuah, because of the Armenians and the Syrians have said, Yahuah Elohim of the hills, but he is not Elohim of the valleys. Therefore, I shall give all the great company into your hands, and you shall know that I am Yahuah.
Can, right? So they thinking like, look, because he's a power of the hills, we know he's a mountain El. He's one of the high L's. We're going to have to fight him in the valley. If we try to fight him uphill, we're going to have the disadvantage, right? Or his people. So Yahuah is listening to this thinking like, oh, y'all think I'm just limited like these other sons, right? Like these other mighty ones y'all know about. So he's about to show himself. 1 Kings 20, 29.
And the word says, and they encamped opposite each other for 7 days. And it came to be that on the 7th day, the battle was joined, and the children of Yasharel struck 100,000 foot soldiers on the Armenians and the Syrians in 1 day.
Okay, so look, in 1 day you see the great slaughter that took place, right? So none of their whatever their diviners was telling them about Yahuah and his people, what they thought that they would get advantage. Because again, when you read this story, these people were practicing divination. They were getting, insight through other realms and stuff about Israel, on how to defeat Israel. And Yahuah was watching all this and looking as they depend on these other mighty ones to give them this, this power and this revelation, and it still doesn't help them. And he even shows out by how they slaughtered them in 1 day, a whole host of them, right? And on the 7th day, this took place. So yeah, it's an interesting story when you read on to it, but we don't have time to go all into it. But keep your mind on Syria, because they're familiar with something that we're going to get into as we come more into the study. But Shem was also a king or a priest, right, ruling over Canaan, right? We know that Enoch passed it down to Shem and so forth, or to Methuselah, and Methuselah passed it on down also, and all the way till we get to Shem. and Noah and so forth, or Noah and Shem and so forth, right? So Shem is believed to ruled over the Canaanites, right? Let's look at Genesis, a Bereshit, chapter 9:26.
And the word says, and he said, Baruch be Yahuah Elohim of Shem, and let Canaan become his servant.
Let Canaan become his servant, right? So Canaan was destined to be servants to Shem, right? Now, we know that Ham was not cursed, but Canaan was cursed, right? Because of the act that took place with Ham and his father. So Shem was known to rule over the Canaanites, and he was also a priest of the Most High. No wonder why Josephus says Shem was a great man among the Canaanites, because he ruled over them, but his kingdom was in Jerusalem. So the original order being king and priest simultaneously. You find some of those records in Jasher and so forth, where he was believed to rule there. But let's look at Genesis 11:10 through 11.
Bereshit chapter 11, verse 10 through 11. And this is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old when he brought forth Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. And verse 11. And after he brought forth Arpachshad, Shem lived 500 years and brought forth sons and daughters.
Okay. So we see Shem lived to be 600 years old. That means he outlived all his generation, right? And who was Shem ruling over? He ruled over Canaanites. And what land did the Most High promise Israel? Canaan, right? Which is originally Shem's land that Canaan stole, according to Jubilees chapter 10, which we read a few weeks ago, right? Jubilees 10:25, where he decided to take the land of Shem because he felt it was a fruitful land. His forefathers warned him not to, and that he would be cursed for taking, his brother's lot. And Jasher 16 talks about Adonzedek, which approached Abraham, right, when he was coming into the land as well, dealing with Sodom. So this is just understandings that are out there, just bringing it forth. Now, we got to learn about the Canaanites, right? We got to learn about the Canaanites for a little bit. So the Canaanites must have known El to remain in the land before exile, right? So we know the Canaanites were dwelling in Yahuah's land, right? Or El's land, El Shaddai. So how are they able to remain there for all this time? Because we even see by the time Israel is made as a nation and going into the land with Joshua, that the Canaanites was there. And we know Canaan took the land from way back, right? Way back in the beginning of the Tower, the Tower of Babel afterwards, right? So how are they able to remain there? So we're just going to look at some history about Canaan for a minute. The Canaanite religion describes the belief system and the ritual practices of the people living in the ancient Levant region throughout the Bronze Age and Iron Age. Like other ancient cultures, Canaanite society was largely concerned with agricultural themes, as a land drier than either Egypt or the Fertile Crescent, which were blessed with large rivers. Canaanite traditions were particularly concerned with rain and drought. The supreme deity of the Canaanite pantheon was El, the creator. He is identified in the Canaanite art as a seated male figure with arms raised as if he's about to give a blessing. Together with his consort Athrat or Ashara, as with the Greek traditions, these early gods were later supplanted by the younger. Remember that these early gods or mighty ones were supplanted by a younger, more immediate presence, especially the rain thunder god Baal and his consorts, his sister, the warrior goddess Anat, and the love fertility goddess Astarte. Early Israelite religion may once have shared the Canaanite belief in El and the other gods before the Jewish monotheistic tradition emerged. So remember in the beginning of the series from a few weeks ago, we talked about, was the belief system of Israel monotheistic or was it henotheistic, right? Now we went over the difference of what monotheism was. Monotheism was the belief of there was no gods but one God. No other gods exist. All the other gods just make believe in your head. While henotheism is there are many gods, but they only exalt and believe in one power and one God, right? But not denying the existence of other gods, right? So the Canaanites started off the same way, right? They understood who El was. Now, El and the superior mighty ones, right, that was with him, they were the ones at first being honored amongst the land of Canaan. But then these younger ones, the sons, they started to put themselves on the forefront above El, right? That's why you see here where it says that the early gods were later supplanted by the younger, right? And that's what took place. So keep that in mind as we're going through, because Canaan was living in the land until they started going off, right? So now the Canaanite pantheon was conceived as a divine clan headed by the supreme god El. The gods collectively made up the Elohim. Through the centuries, the pantheon of Canaanite gods evolved so that El and Asherah were more important in early times, while Baal and his consorts came to fore in later years. Many of the Canaanite deities found their way into the Greek and Roman pantheon. For example, the characteristics of both El and Baal may be seen in Zeus, while Astarte resembles Aphrodite. Anat is similar to Athena, and Yam is similar to Poseidon, and Mot to Hades or Thanatos. So some of the deities listed below are mentioned only briefly in the Canaanite text, while others were important locally or nationally, such as Chemosh, but not throughout the region. Still others, such as Moloch, are known mainly from the Hebrew text, right? So even the Greeks, all of them telling the same story of the fallen ones, you know, the fallen angels fighting with the Nephilim and so forth. These were the giants, and you have Mount Olympus and all these powers or mighty ones that dwelt there. Every culture understood this whole hierarchy of these 70 sons that were ruling over the nations, but they called them different names. When the Tower of Babel changed the languages and everybody went to their province and region, they were all talking about the same powers, but just calling it different names, right? But then they end up, you know, these 70 sons end up going off and they start teaching error, right? To where they start exalting themselves above El and so forth. And that's where, everything turned upside down. El, the Canaanite or Hebrew supreme creator god, father of the gods, in 1929, archaeologists discovered a treasure trove of cuneiform tablet in Ugarit, right? It's a port city in northern Syria. Over 1,500 tablets were collected from a temple library, a palace library, and 2 private libraries support the local library. They date back to 1300 to 1100 BCE. Within them is a vast, though fragmented collection of early Canaanite myths, many of which are echoed in the Bible or the scriptures. I use the word echo loosely. There are some chunks that are almost straight copy and paste, but they gave scholars a glimpse into how closely related the Hebrews were to the Canaanites. The Canaanite supreme creator god was El the Most High, which is El Elyon, is the eternal creator, father of man, father of the gods, and creator of creatures. He was depicted as an older man with a graying beard who sits on the throne above the clouds, like a sky deity. His 3 primary sons were Yam, the god of the sea, Mot, the god of death, and Baal, the storm god, kind of like Poseidon, Hades, and Zeus. El was benevolent and compassionate father figure who ruled the universe in tandem with the divine council, for whom he divided up the nations, as we read in Deuteronomy 32:8, a few weeks ago. So he was said to dwell at the edge of creation in a tent rather than a temple where 2 sacred rivers flowed. All right. So Syrian and Palestinian religion, right? Beliefs of Syria and Palestine between 3000 and 300 BCE. These religions are usually defined by languages of those who practice them: Amorite, Hurrian, Ugaritic, Phoenician, Aramaic, and Moabite. The term Canaanite is often used broadly to cover a number of these, as well as the religion of early periods in areas from which there are no written sources. Knowledge of the religions of these groups is very uneven. It is usually consists of mere glimpses of one or another aspect, only from the city-state of Ugarit. All right, this is through the 14th, 13th century BCE, and there's a wide range of religious expression for historical background on the region. Right, these are different sources. You can look into that. In general, it appears that a few types have prevailed and persisted over the centuries. The most pervasive type was the storm god Hadad, Baal, and Teshub, who was associated with rain, thunder, and lightning. Now, remember, this was a fertility god, right, and a war god. And this is why Israel would, when they would abandon Yahuah, they would go to Baal, because he would control the rain and everything for crops and other nations' deity. That's what his role was. So Yahuah would do that for Israel, but when they went off, they would go after this mighty one for their crops and stuff to be fertile. Another type was a more patriarchal creator god bearing the simple name El, right? The major female deities appear to have been of either the belligerent type, Anat and Astarte, or the matriarchal type, Asherah. These often, but not always, served as the respective consorts of the two male types, also prominent throughout the period, were a solar and a lunar deity. Consistent with the sources of documentation, the monarch emerges as a significant medium between God and the people, acting on the people's behalf in the cult of the god, and on the god's behalf in the care of the people. The cult was generally practiced in a house of the gods, right, or the house of God, where a professional priesthood attended to the daily needs of the gods represented in effigy, right? So there's a priesthood going on here, right? This is way before, again, Israel, right? But there is a priesthood going on to serve this god El and these other mighty ones that they end up worshiping along with him. All right. This is just some history over there that you can see about how Baal end up coming into the Hebrew text at a certain time, and Ishtar as well, right? Now, remember, Yahuah allotted the other nations to worship the other children he had, right, that were governing the nations. But Israel was his specific lot. Everybody had their own portion of lot that was a part of their possession as a nation. But Israel belonged to Yahuah alone. All right. Typical temple furniture included the cult statue, standing stones, bowls and their stands, altars, benches around the walls, Heirs, and this is in the Jordan Valley, north of the Sea of Galilee. This is where all this archaeology is coming out of, where Israel is located, right? And it has yielded a 13th century BCE statue of a male deity on a bull-shaped base. In another temple, a set of cultic objects, also from the 13th century, was found behind a stone slab, a seated male figure, and a group of standing stones, the central one of which has engraved on it a vertical pair of arms with hands outstretched towards a disc and crescent. Typically, the monarch or the king, and sometimes other members of the royal family, played a leading role in the most significant cultic acts and festivals. Syrian and Palestinian religion, God's mythology, worldview is Britannica. The monarch paying tribute. This is what you see on the right side is the monarch or the king paying tribute to the seated god El, right? The Assyrian, Palestinian, Canaanite cultural spiritual system. So this is what these people in this region where El, this is his territory. These are archaeological evidence that they have showing how they worship El. And he was this older god that had this long gray white beard, right? And he was the one ruling everything, right? He was the highest god of all of them. And he was the one in control. So this is, again, a stele found at the site of Ras Shamras in ancient Ugarit, and has been identified representing El, and it shows him bearded, no wings. He doesn't have wings like he made some of his sons, right? And he's seated in a chair, a throne with a footstool. He wears a helmet of bull horns, and he was called Ab Adam, meaning the father of man, right? And the horns on his helmet identified him as a god, meaning that his ranking or authority was high, right? El was also called Bull El, and his children Baal and Anat could assume the forms of bovines to mate with each other, no doubt. Bull El could also assume a bovine form as well. A priest ministers before the seated god. In the background, in a winged sun disk, a form of the Egyptian god Horus, right? So they're just trying to correlate other cultures because, again, all of them worship the same deities but call them different names. Now, talking about this bull, right? The word or name God, right? We understand that many in the Hebrew community refrain from using the English word God because they believe it's pagan in origin, right? The German word gold, right? or God, or the Aramaic term God, denoting a pagan god worshipped by early Canaanites. What they don't tell you, however, because many simply don't study linguistics or etymology or what history outside of the scriptures, is that the Sumerian word for ox, right, or bull is God, right, which is then akin to the Hebrew word for God, El, which also means ox or bull. Okay, so the same word which began as bull or ox and became God in Hebrew is El, and in the Sumerian language is God or God, right? So when you look at what we get for El, right, in the Hebraic alphabet, how you put that together, you have the Aleph, the ox, and from Hebrew is right to left. So we have the Aleph and the Lamed, which gives you El. The Aleph is the pictograph of the ox head, which represents strength, strong authority, right? A mighty one. Then you have the Lamed, which represents the staff, meaning he's the shepherd, right? He leads and guides and he controls. So he's the high El, the owner of the sky and the land, right? The El is mighty strength and power. Rescue me, for you are my El, Isaiah 44:17. I am El Shaddai, right? So we see you have El Elyon, which is the father, and then you have his son, El Shaddai, right? Commonly called Yahuah Jr., or the Malak Yahuah, right? He's also the firstborn of El, right? He has his own region where he rules over Israel and the certain nations in that area, all right? Which we read, we seen that a few weeks ago. So this is what God means, right? And this is how they even said in Sumer. We know that ancient Sumer is where we see Abraham coming from, right? And Ur of the Chaldees, that's Sumer, right? So all this stuff originates in this area, all right? So again, it's just the Hebrew letters El. You see the Lamed, you see the Aleph. Aleph means ox or bull, strength, leader. And in the Lamed, you see the staff, cattle, toward or to control authority. But we see God is a strong or first authority. That's what El means. All right. So God is the most commonly used Sumerian word for ox. Is either from a god or God with initial vowel drops, or more probably ugad, formed by initial vowel drops or known occurrence. All right, so yeah, this is just another, where you can see the pictographic Hebrew along with the ancient Paleo Hebrew and the modern Hebrew, and you see what ox represents, right? The Aleph, right? Ox head, strength, power, leader, and then the Lamed is right next to it on the right side, which means a shepherd's staff, right? Which teaches or yokes, binds towards, right? So we know that El, or the father, he is the head, right? He's called the head of days in Enoch, right? The ancient of days, right? He is the strong power, the authority figure, and he rules with his scepter or his staff, right? And he is the shepherd over all the sons of El and the sons of earth, right? The sons of Adam, man. So this is just for understanding purposes. All right. So now we understand that Abraham was called from where? What area? Anybody know where was Abraham called from when he was told to go into a land that Yahuah said he promised him? Anybody know? All right, everybody quiet. Okay.
What was it? Haran?
Haran. Oh, how'd you know that, Agi? Haran, huh? And where is Haran located? What area is that?
Okay, I can't get it on the top of my head right now.
Okay, well, good answer, Haran. All right, so that was good. So Haran, right? This is the landmass of what we call Syria. This is the Levant region, right? And notice what all touches that, because this is where Yahuah's territory is. They know who he is in this area, all right? So we see that Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Israel, Lebanon, all this area right here is called the Levant, and it was known as Syria, right? Now we know that Abraham started from Ur of the Chaldees, right? Sumer area. And then he went up. We see Babylon not too far from there, right? Babylon was a city state. And then we see him going up And where y'all see Haran, y'all see that up there where you see Aram, which Aram or Armenia, this area was called Syria. This was known as Syria up here. And we see Haran is where Yahuah called Abraham. And then he goes down from Haran all the way down into the promised land, which is Canaan land. And this is his journey. This is the route that Abraham took to leave his home, right? He had to leave Sumer, the Chaldees, also Babylon, all right? Bereshit 11:31, let's read that so y'all can see that he left from there.
All right, and the word says, and Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarah, a wife of his sons Abram, and together they set out from unto the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there.
So notice they left that you can see right here at the bottom, right? And then all of them, Lot, his father, everybody went up to Haran in Syria because that's where they come from. All right, we're gonna find that out too. So they went up to Syria, and notice Syria is where where El is known and everything, right? And this is where he has his encounter of, hey, El speaks to him and says, leave your father's house and come to a place I'm gonna show you, right? So we see that they're here in Haran in Syria. That's where they settled at before they go into Canaan land. Genesis 12, verse 1.
And it says, Yahuah has said to Abram, go from out your country and your people and your father's household to the land I will show you. He took his wife Sarah and his nephew Lot as a possession they had accumulated in the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out of the land of Canaan, and they arrived there.
Okay, so notice they got, they got wealthy in Haran, right? And then they go down into Canaan land. So he takes Lot, he takes, Sarai, his father's not going, right? Notice his father is staying in Haran and so forth, right? So Lot and Abraham and his wife, they're all going down there with all their possessions now. So just showing that. Now let's see what Deuteronomy 26 verse 5 says.
And it says, and thou shalt speak and say before Yahuah the Elohim, a Syrian ready to perish was my father, and he went down to Egypt and sojourned there for a few, and became there a nation great and mighty and popularious.
Okay, so
yes,
notice he said Assyrian. So notice that Abraham is a Syrian, right? Jacob is a Syrian. That's our origin, right? And it says we went down into Egypt because remember Abraham went into Egypt first. Remember, and the Pharaoh Abimelech took his wife and all this stuff. They dwelt there for a while, and they became very wealthy because he gave them Hagar, a whole bunch of servants, and a whole bunch of gold, silver, and flocks. They became they had a lot of possessions, right? And then they go into the land of Canaan, right? So it's telling you the history right here. So Syria is a major landmark of understanding who El is, right? Understanding the belief system, understanding of the patriarchs before Israel is even stepping on the scene. All right. Now let's look at Abraham being initiated into the priesthood. All right. Bereshit 14, verse 17 through 20.
and after he had returned from the striking of Kedorah, the sovereigns who were with him, and the sovereigns of Sodom came out to meet him at the valley of Shawah. What is this? Shawah. Shower with the sovereign of the valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine, and he was a priest of the Most High.
Elyon, right? So he was a priest of Elyon,
yes.
right? He was a Kohen.
Yes.
Now notice Kohens are where you always hear Kohen when it's referring to the Levitical priest. So this was a Kohen that was not a Levite priest, but he was a priest of the Most High El Elyon. All right, El the Father. Genesis 14:19.
And it says, and he baruched him and said, Baruch be Abraham, of Yah Mosai Elyon, professor of the Shemaims and Earth, and Baruch be Elyon, who has delivered your enemies into your hands. He gave him a tenth of Messer of all.
Cain, right? So this is when he overcame the kings of Sodom and all his his goods of war. He gave a tenth of that to this priest here. So this is where we're seeing Abraham being initiated into this priesthood of Melchizedek, right? This was the ancient priesthood before Levite priesthood stepped on the scene. This is who all the patriarchs, this is the priesthood, all of them were officiating and moving in. And the nations also understanding who El was through this priesthood. All right. Yahuah is appearing to Abraham here, right? After he is inducted into the priesthood through Melchizedek. And he promises him this land that he's in, right? Which this is the land of Canaan, but he's in Jerusalem right now, right? But this is known as Canaan land. And he's saying, I'm gonna give you your descendants all this land. And he's like, well, how am I gonna know that I'm gonna possess it? And he has him do his first sacrifice and offering as a priest. All right, let's look at that. Genesis 15, verse 8. Bereshit chapter 15.
And it says, he said, O Adonai, how may I know that I will possess it? He said unto him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer and a 3-year-old female goat and 3-year-old ram and a turtle dove and a young pigeon. Then he brought all these to him and cut them into two and laid each half opposite of each other. And he did not cut the bird. First sacrificed by Abram. Then in the fourth generation they will return here, for the iniquity and the punishment for the Amorites is not yet to come.
Okay, yeah, it's not yet complete, right? Shalom. So notice that Abraham is getting promised this land, but he's saying, look, the fourth generation of your people is going to inherit it, right? You can't inherit it right now, Abraham, because the iniquity or the punishment of the Amorite has not come to its completion. Now, the question becomes, Yahuah knows the Amorites? The Amorites are in Yahuah's land, right? And they have iniquity or sin. Now, if there's no law for the nations or the Gentiles, then how is there iniquity of the Amorites? How is Yahuah laying charge against them if Yahuah didn't know no other nation but Israel, right? And Amorites are in his land, and he's telling Abraham, you will not inherit it right now, but the fourth generation of your people will inherit it, because by that time, the iniquity or the punishment of the iniquity of the Amorite will be at its completion. Right? So I want y'all to get in your head that to be able to dwell in Yahuah's land, there are some rules. All right. There are some Torah that has to be honored to be able to dwell there. And the Amorites dwelt there for a certain time until they went off. All right. And then he comes in and has another nation come in and vomit them out of his land, which we're going to see what took place. All right. But let's talk about the Amorites for a minute. Let's go over some history. Right. Now, specific deities known as El include the supreme god of the Canaanite religion and the supreme god of the Mesopotamian Semites in the pre-Sargonic period. Amorites, right? Amorite inscriptions from Zinkerli refer to numerous gods, sometimes by name, sometimes by title, especially by such title as El Abrat, god of the people, El Abika, god of your father, El Abini, god of our father, and so forth. Various family gods are recorded, divine names listed as belong to a particular family or clan, sometimes by title and sometimes by name, including the name El. In Amorite personal names, the most common divine elements are El, Hadad, Adad, and Dagon. It is likely that El is also very often the god called in the Akkadian text, the Amoru or El Amoru. So the Akkadians, they are another Semitic tribe or nation in that are in that region. They also understood the divine council. They understood El as being the father and so forth. So these are the ancient cultures around before Israel even comes into being that understood this priesthood and understood El the father and his 70 sons are mighty ones, which are called gods. All right, in Psalms 89 and so forth. So Ugarit, right, and the Levant. For the Canaanites and the ancient Levantine region as a whole, El was the supreme God, the father of mankind and all creatures. He also fathered many gods, most importantly Hadad, Yam, and Mot, each sharing similar attributes to the Greco-Roman gods Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. All right. So again, this is ancient Sumer, of the Chaldees, where Abraham left, right? And he went up to Haran, which is up here. And this Mesopotamia area, this is Syria. You see Ugarit. Where's Ugarit at? It's on the coast. Now see where Ugarit is? This is the coastline right here, right where you coming down, where you get to Israel, right? The land of Canaan, Jerusalem, and so forth, coming down the seacoast, right? So this is all Yahuah's area, all right, in Syria here. So as recorded on the clay tablets of Ugarit, El is the husband of the goddess Asherah. 3 pantheon lists found at Ugarit, modern Ras Shamra. This is where they dug up all these archaeology. This is proven more that the scriptures is factual, because all the stuff that is talked about in the scriptures was found in this site, right? And this is before Israel, okay? Israel didn't dwell in this region. They dwell at the lower region, but they have the same idealistic and religion and everything being practiced up here, and it predates Israel, right? So again, it's the name of the generic kind of a deity, perhaps the divine ancestors of the people, El. Now Dagon was another son of El that was being worshipped over there. Baal, Sapan, Hadad. So through Ugarit, it had a large temple dedicated to Dagon and another to Hadad, and there was no temple dedicated to El, right? So this was disrespectful, right? El was the supreme deity, but the younger gods or his younger sons became the supreme deities. So you see how in earlier times, El was the one that was exalted above all, but then later on, they started to put the younger ones above El, and this is where all the error and all the transgression and iniquity start taking place. All right. So El is called again, and again, Toru El, Bull El. Remember, Bull is the ox, it's the Aleph. He's representative of that, the chief power. He is Bathniu or Benwati, creator of the creatures. Abu Bani Eli, father of the gods. Abu Adami, the father of man. He is Queen Yunu Olam, creator of eternal, right? The epithet Olam appearing in Hebrew form in the Hebrew name of God, Olam, El Olam, God eternal, right? So you can see that in Bereshit 21:33. He is Hatikuka, your patriarch. El is the great bearded ancient one, full of wisdom. Malku king, Abu Samima, father of years, or ancient of days, right? El Gibor, El the warrior, right? He is also named of unknown meaning, various rendered as Latpan, a Latipan, or Latpani, shroud face, El father of heaven. They say Saturn and his major son Hadad, father of earth. Jupiter are symbolized both by the bull, and both wear bull horns on their head dresses. So you have the father, right? El, and then you have his son also, El Hadad, and they both have these horns, showing that they're like the chief powers among all the rest of the powers. And again, it's just like we see Abba or El Elyon Yahuah and then El Shaddai Yahuah the son, and they both represented as the Aleph, or the ox, or the head of the sons, right? These are the chief, they are the highest in authority, right? So Ugarit is this place where they dug up all this stuff, right? Ugarit is the capital of the Ugarit kingdom, and an ancient city lying in a large artificial mound called Ras Shamra. So these are the excavations that begun in 1929 by a French archaeological mission under the direction of Claude F.A. Scoffer. Right, so this is the golden age of Ugarit. Ugarit was probably occupied from the first appearance of humans in Syria, but the most prosperous and the best documented age in Ugarit history dated from about 1450 to about 1200 BC, produced great royal palaces and temples and shrines with a high priest library and other libraries on the Acropolis. After the discovery of the temple library, which revealed a hitherto unknown cuneiform alphabetic script, as well as the entirely new mythological and religious literature, several other palatial as well as private libraries were found, along with archives dealing with all aspects of the city's political, social, economic, and cultural life. The excavations continue, and each season throws some new and often unexpected light on the ancient North Canaanite civilization. Soon after 1200 BC, Ugarit came to an end. Its fall coincided with the invasion of the northern and sea peoples, and certainly with earthquakes and famines in the Iron Age during the 6th, 4th century BC. There were small settlements on the site of Lukos Lyman. Now, who are the sea people known as in Scripture? Does anybody know who the sea people are in Scripture? Anybody got an idea?
I thought the sea people was ain't they the ones that's connected to the ships of Tarshish?
No, the ships of Tarshish are the sons of they're Japhet. They're from the line of Japhet. Javan and them. They're the ones that built those ships of Tarshish and so forth. But here the sea people are known as the Philistines, right? The Philistines worship.
Okay.
Remember, the Philistines worship Dagon. He was a fish god.
The fish, yeah.
Right. So Dagon was one of the sons of El, okay, but he ended up going off. All right. Remember, these sons had their own lots of nations they ruled over. We read about in the first class that we did, right? So now these Philistines, these sea people are coming into Ugarit and they whooping them, right? Because they done went off. Remember how Yahuah does. When you go off from doing what he tells you to do, he sends another nation to destroy and to remove you out of the land, to have you scattered. All right. Keep that in mind, because we should know that, because Israel went through this stuff, right? But this was going on way before Israel steps on the scene, is what I want you to get. Yah has rules to remain in his region, in his land. If you don't keep his Torah, his instructions, and you start worshiping other powers above him, and you start doing all kind of divination and wickedness, he'll send a nation in there. And in this case, the Philistines come in here and Ugarit, and they destroy Ugarit. All right. The sea people are the Philistines. So this was a private city. Then all of a sudden, people came in and started to wipe it out. El tends to do this to those that forsake worshiping him and those that don't guard his commandments. Neolithic Ugarit was important enough to be fortified with a wall early on, perhaps by 6000 BCE, though the site is thought to have been inhabited earlier. Ugarit was important perhaps because it was both a port at the entrance of the inland trade route of the Euphrates and the Tigris lands. The city reached its heyday between 1800 and 1200 BCE, when it ruled a trade-based coastal kingdom, trading with Egypt, Cyprus, and Aegean, Syria, the Hittites, and much of the Eastern Mediterranean. In the 2nd millennium BC, Ugarit's population was Amorite, and the Ugaritic language probably had a direct Amoritic origin. So the city was there since 6000 BCE, and then about 3000 years later, we have these Amorites coming in, right, to the city. And then about 800 years later, the city met its destruction. The last Bronze Age king of Ugarit was Amurapi, right? Circa 1215 to 1180 BC, was a contemporary of the last known Hittite king, Supilumia. I'm probably messing up his name there. The second. The exact dates of his reign are unknown. However, a letter by the king is preserved in which Amurapi stresses the seriousness of the crisis faced by many Near Eastern states due to attacks by the advancing sea people, the Philistines. Amurapi pleads for assistance from the king, Alatia, highlighting the desperate situation Ugarit faced. However, no help arrived. Ugarit was burned to the ground at the end of the Bronze Age. Phoenicians are widely thought to have originated from earlier Canaanite inhabitants of the region, although Egyptian seafaring expeditions had already been made to Byblos to bring back cedars of Lebanon as early as the 3rd millennium BC. Continuous contact only occurred in the Egyptian New Empire period, and in the Amarna tablets of the 14th century BC, people from the region called themselves Kanani or Kinani, probably as same as Canaanites, although these letters predate the invasion of the Sea Peoples by over a century, right? So again, the history we get of the Philistines when Israel is stepping on the scene, this stuff predates that because they existed way before Israel came down, way later in the 4th generation, that Yahuah was telling Abraham that they would come into the land. So they're getting all the history here of what's going on in this region, all right? So apart from royal correspondence with neighboring Bronze Age monarchs, Ugaritic literature from tablets found in the city's libraries include mythological texts written in a poetic narrative, letters and legal documents such as land transfers and few international treaties, and a number of administrative lists. The discovery of the Ugaritic archives in 1929 has been of great significance of biblical scholarship, as these archives for the first time provided a detailed description of Canaanite religious beliefs during the period directly preceding the Israelite settlement. These texts show significant parallels to Hebrew biblical literature, particularly in the areas of divine imagery and poetic form. Ugaritic poetry has many elements later found in Hebrew poetry, parallelisms, symmetries, and rhythms. The discoveries at Ugarit have led to a new appraisal of the Hebrew Bible as literature. So all this that they're digging is making the scriptures more credible to these scholars, because they're like, at first they didn't have none of this historical stuff to prove the Bible, to prove the scriptures outside of the scriptures. Now all of this, they're like, man, it makes the scriptures more credible because it's given the historical archaeology proving what the scriptures have been saying. All right. The foundations of the Bronze Age city Ugarit were divided into quarters. In the northeastern quarter of the wall enclosure, the remains of 3 significant religious buildings were discovered, including 2 temples of the gods, Baal, Hadad, and Dagon, and a building referred to as the library of the high priest's house. Within these structures, atop of the Acropolis, numerous invaluable mythological texts were found. These texts have provided the basis for understanding of the Canaanite mythological world and religion. After its destruction in the early 12th century BC, Ugarit's location was forgotten until 1928. Documents unearthed have revealed many parallels between ancient Canaanites and Israelite practices. All right. So again, no temple for El, but they got temples for Baal and Dagon. You see this? So you see why they end up getting destroyed. While we know El to be the chief of the Canaanite pantheon, very little attention is paid to him in the cultic mythological texts. This is rather common of Middle or Late Bronze Age mythology. The high god is drawn into the background while the new warrior deities move to the center stage. So you see what's going on. You see why they get spewed out that land, they get destroyed. They only had 2 temples to 2 gods, but El is supreme. So this is disrespectful, right? And this is where all the errors started here. So now there are priesthood rituals in Ugarit, right? From this text and those that will follow, it is clear that the primary act of the Ugarit cult was the offering of bloody sacrifices and other offerings to deities. Under this heading are presented several texts that contain indication of a series of rites arranged in chronological sequence during a portion of a single month or the entirety thereof. So this is just showing you the offerings they did within a month, all right? And we're just going to look at some. You got 2 rams and a bull, right? For a Natu, you have a ram. For Baal, you have a ram for Dagon. You have these bullocks, these ewes, which are lambs or sheep. Then you have on the 3rd day of the month, you see more of all these sacrifices that were being done. You see burnt offerings. You see 2 birds. You know how in the Levitical priests, how they were supposed to take the liver, they had to take the organs. They're doing the same stuff here. That's why you see in B, you see the 2 livers, right? You see C.
I see. Okay, I see it. I see it.
Yeah.
It make more sense.
Then like here at D, you see when the sun sets, the king will be free of the further cultic obligations, right? So he will be done, his service will be done when the sun goes down, which is the ending of that day. So you see how they follow these same type of procedures. On the 14th day, the king will wash himself. He will mikvah himself, wash himself a certain way. On the day of the full moon, 2 bulls are to fall. And then there's a feast, right? There's where you see 2 kidneys of a ram and a liver of a ram, all this stuff. So this is just examples of these burnt offerings that they were doing in these temples, right? In Ugarit. And there was this priesthood, right? And this is priesthoods before Israel and Levi stepped on the scene, all right? So this is just, as y'all can just see, peace offerings, right? Of a sheep and a ram and burnt offerings and all this stuff. All these different sacrifices for these different deities, from Dagon to Baal and so forth. So yeah, so this is just an example, y'all, just showing y'all how they would do mikvahs, cleansing after the sacrifices and before, all these different things as you see the Levites would do. On the new moon, you see 2 rams in the sanctuary and a shekel of silver and a bowl of dirt cloths for Baalatu, and a ram of 2 birds. So you just see this. Then the sons of the kings and the daughters, the kings will ascend 7 times. On the 3rd day, the gods ascended to the human sanctuary. So on the 3rd day, it would be, they believe that the presence, or the mighty ones or the gods would appear at a certain time where they would dwell, and only the high priest can go in at that certain time, right? So all this stuff is similarities, right? But this is an ancient priesthood before the Levitical priesthood, all right? So it's just examples. So now, an Amorite is also known as a Canaanite, right? Is he not a descendant of Canaan, right? Because remember, the Amorites end up coming into Ugarit, right? So let's look at that real quick. Look at Genesis 10, Bereshit 10, verse 15.
All right, Bereshit 10:15, and it says, and Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites, and the Jebusites, and the Hivites, and the Archetytes, and the Sinites, and the Avidites, and the Zemarites, and the Habathites. And afterwards the families of Canaan spread abroad, and the borders of the Canaanites was from Sidon, and as thou comest as Gerar unto Gaza, and thou go Gaza, Salaki, and thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zebulun and Elisha, and the sons of Ham by their clans and languages and their territories and nations.
So these are the sons of Ham, right? By their clans, languages, and their territories and nations. So Amorites were sons of Ham, right? They were of the Canaanites, right? Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, and the Amorite, right? So Amorite members of an ancient Semitic speaking people. So, they were Hamitic. They spoke a Semitic language, right? They dominated the history of Mesopotamia, Syria, and Palestine from about 2000 to about 1600 BC. In the oldest cuneiform source, 2400 to 2000 BC, the Amorites were equated with the West, though their true place of origin was most likely Arabia, not Syria. They were troublesome nomads and were believed to be one of the cause of the downfall of the 3rd dynasty of Ur. All right. And you can find that in the Britannica.com topic, Amorite. The monumental evidence is as follows: Egyptian inscriptions. They call the land of east of Phoenicia, or the northern of Palestine, the land of the Amara, right? The Amara, or the Amor of the text, is chiefly the valley between the Lebanon and the anti-Lebanon mountains. The modern Bika and the El Amarna tablets, Azuru, the prince of the same region, is called the prince of Amoru. The latter name does not seem to be much more comprehensive than in the Egyptian text, and certainly does not apply to Palestine. Only in the later cuneiform text, the older expression Amoru is used so vaguely that Phoenicia and even neighboring countries are included. All right, but the Babylonian letter group Amartu, or Martu for West, hardly belongs here. But because of similar sound, in its earlier form, it was written for Amaru in the Amarna tablets, and still more frequently afterward in extended significance of Amaru. So at the present, it is not very easy to show the connection between the monumental Amorites and the Palestinian Amorites of the scriptures, according to Wickler, Guest Israel's. He assumes that the Amorites, somewhere about the time of the El Amarna tablets after 1400 BC, descended into Palestine from their original northern habitations. He supports this by the fact that only those of the earlier biblical traditions which belong to the northern kingdom contain the name Amorites. The Egyptian inscriptions indeed seem to treat the name of the original country Amor as a geographical term, always connecting it with the article, while Amorite is in the Bible an ethnic name, right? So we see that the Amorites, they were a nomadic kind of people, right? In the earliest Sumerian sources concerning the Amorites, beginning about 2400 BC, the land of the Amorites, or the Martu land, is associated with Mesopotamia, but with the lands up to the west of the Euphrates, including Canaan and what was to become Syria. They appear as the uncivilized and nomadic people in early Mesopotamian writings from Sumer, right? Akkadian and Assyria, especially connected with the mountainous region of Jebel Bishri in the northern Syria, called the Mountain of the Amorites. Known Amorites wrote in a dialect of Akkadian, found on tablets at Mari dating from 1800 to 1750 BC. Since the language shows northwest Semitic forms, words, and constructions, the Amorite language is believed to be a northwest branch of the Canaanite languages. So there are also sparse mentions in the tablets from the East Semitic speaking kingdom of the Ebla, dating from 2500 BC to the destruction of the city in 2250 BC from the perspective of the East Semitic speaking Eblaites. So again, the Amorites were a rural group living in a narrow basin of the middle and upper Euphrates in the northern Syria. These Amorites appear as nomadic clans ruled by fierce tribal chiefs who forced themselves into lands that needed to graze their herds. Some of the Akkadian literature of this era speaks despairingly of the Amorites and implies that the Akkadians and the Sumerian speakers of Mesopotamia viewed their nomadic and primitive way of life with disgust and contempt. So these Amorites would go up in people's land, just take over their territory and kill them and take their, for their herds to eat eat off the land and everything. But these Amorites were running from something, is what I want y'all to get. They were in Ugarit, right? But they end up doing something where some people chased them out of there. Now they coming into this lower country here in the Levant area, in Palestine and so forth, and they're over there bullying people and taking their lands and killing them so their herds can feed, running from somewhere and from something. All right. So the rise of the Amorite kingdoms in Mesopotamia brought about deep and lasting repercussions in its political, social, and economic structure, especially in southern Mesopotamia. This era ended in northern Mesopotamia with the defeated and expulsion of the Amorites and Amorite-dominated Babylonians from Assyria by Puzur-Sin and King Adasi between 1740 and 1735 BC, and in the far south by the rise of the native Sealand dynasty circa 1730 BC. After their expulsion from Mesopotamia, the Amorites of Syria came under the domination of first the Hittite Empire, and from the 14th century BC, the Middle Assyrian Empire. They appear to have been displaced or absorbed by a new wave of semi-nomadic West Semitic-speaking Semites, the Armenians, right? The Armenians from circa 1200 BC onwards, and thus disappeared from the pages of history. From this period, the region they had inhabited became known as Aram or Aramea. The term Amorites is used in the Bible to refer to certain highland mountaineers who inhabited the land of Canaan, described in Genesis 10 and 16 as descendants of Canaan, sons of Ham. They are described as a powerful people of great stature, like the height of the cedars. So they were very, very tall people who had occupied the land east and west of the Jordan. The biblical Amorites seem to have originally occupied the region stretching from the highest west of the Dead Sea, all right, to Hebron, embracing all of Gilead and all Bashan, with the Jordan Valley, all right, on the east of the rivers, the land of the two kings of the Amorites, Sihon and Og, all right. Og of Bashan, right? So all this is historical evidence, y'all, showing where Joshua was going on and destroying them and casting them out of the land and so forth, right? Because they end up again going off. Now, King Hammurabi, is anybody familiar with King Hammurabi? Anybody ever heard of him before? King Hammurabi.
Not me.
Okay. So King Hammurabi, he was a famous Amorite, right? Hammurabi was an Amorite first dynasty king of the city-state of Babylon and inherited the power from his father, Sin Muballit, in 1792 BC. Babylon was one of the many largely Amorite-ruled city-states that dotted the central and southern Mesopotamian plains and waged war on each other for control of fertile agricultural land. Though many cultures coexisted in Mesopotamia, Babylonian culture gained a degree of prominence among the literate classes throughout the Middle East under Hammurabi. Now, the Code of Hammurabi is a well-preserved Babylonian law code of ancient Mesopotamia, dating back to about 1754 BC. It is one of the oldest deciphered writings of significant length in the world. The sixth Babylonian king Hammurabi enacted the code, and partial copies exist on a human-sized stone stela and various clay tablets. The code consists of 282 laws, with scaled punishments adjusting an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, lex talionis, as graded depending on social status, of slave versus free man. Nearly one half of the code deals with matters of contracts, establishing, for example, the wages to be paid to an ox driver or a surgeon. Other provisions set the terms of a transaction, establishing liability of a builder for a house that collapses. For example, a property that is damaged while left in the care of another. A third of the code addresses issues concerning the household and family relationships, such as inheritance, like the Levirate law that we know in Deuteronomy 25, divorce in Deuteronomy 24, paternity and sexual behavior. Only one provision appears to impose obligations on an official. This provision establishes that a judge who reaches an incorrect decision is to be fined and removed from the bench permanently. A handful of provisions address issues related to military service. Anybody got a hand raised before I move on? Somebody in the chat. Oh, okay, maybe I missed it.
Oh no, that was probably me, because while you was reading about Hammurabi, he was the one that wrote well, I remember his name was mentioned in the Avengers movie when they was looking at the stones.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, he's very famous.
Remember with Thor? Remember with Thor?
I remember Thor, but I don't remember the part where he may have mentioned that. But yeah, so this was he was the first one known to have stone tablets of laws, right? And remember, these Amorites, where they come from, they didn't have none of this till they left Ugarit or Syria, all right? Because when they came in there, right, there was a priesthood already there. There was a whole system already in place, and they took that with them, and they end up doing some things. And remember, there's an iniquity of the Amorites that Yah still hasn't paid to the full yet, right? And when you get into the history, you start to see what the Amorites actually did, that why Yahuah has this vengeance, this iniquity that he wants to repay them, and he's going to repay Israel for the same thing that have adopted their ways. So these laws, right, you find a lot of the Torah that Moses gets that is in here, and they are way before Israel even steps on the scene, 300 years before Israel. Do you understand what we're going to look? About 300 years after Hammurabi's law, the Mosaic law was written using similar wordings, but their differences have caused the theory that Moses' law is simply a rewording of Hammurabi's to be largely abandoned, right? So some people want to say that Israel copied from Hammurabi, but they didn't. There's a lot of similarities and there's some differences as well. But we're going to figure out what happened here, or how Hammurabi got this. The theory that Moses' law is simply a rewording of Hammurabi's has largely been abandoned today due to the fact that similar law codes, even older than Hammurabi's, have been found in various other places. This would include the cuneiform laws written as early as 2350 BC in the code of Uru Kajina in 2380 BC, and the code of Namu 2050 BC, and others. Notice and all these places is coming out of Sumer, where Abraham comes from. All this stuff is the oldest of date, and it all from that part up and down into the Canaan land is where all this stuff comes from, right? So both Hammurabi and Moses recorded a complex system of laws that were unique to their times. Hammurabi claimed to receive his code from the Babylonian god of justice, Shamash. He's the Babylonian god of justice, right? And Moses received Elohim's law atop of Mount Sinai directly from Yahuah, the Elohim of the Israelites, right? So there are some similarities between the Mosaic law and the code of Hammurabi's, as would be expected from two legislative systems. However, their significant differences demonstrate the baselessness of the charge of the Moses copied from the code of Hammurabi. Now, in this picture, you see both Hammurabi and Shamash, they're the same height, right? And it symbolizes that they are equals in a sense, even though Shamash is a god, heavenly god, while Hammurabi is trying to be like a god on earth, if you will, right? And this image depicts Shamash directly giving the 282 laws to Hammurabi, right? So you see the Amorite deity Shamash, which is a god of justice for them, gives them a Torah, gives them instructions and laws on how to govern themselves on earth, just like the other 70 sons did with their nations that they were supposed to rule over. But they were all supposed to exalt El the Father, but they became the ones exalted instead of the Father later on. They wanted to be the one to get all the praise and all the esteem alone. And that's when all this error started happening. Remember, the 70 sons end up going off and start teaching the nations error. So everything started from a specific point, and then it went off to error. So how were the Canaanites / Amorites able to abide in the land of Yahuah? Right? How was that? Does anybody know how were they able to stay there? Were they keeping Torah? Is the question. Were they keeping?
No, they was not.
Like
you said that like if they didn't keep and
I can't hear everybody. Repeat yourself.
It sounded like they was keeping the Torah for a portion of the time until they got kicked out.
Yeah.
Right.
You said that if anybody, was keeping the Torah, they would be in the land, but if they weren't, they were banished out of it.
Cain. So the land would spew them out, and we're gonna see, did Yah warn Israel about the same things? Did Yah forewarn Israel about how he gets down or how he rules? Because all this happened before Israel, right? So we're gonna look at some things here. Let's look at Genesis 15 and 16 one more time. Bereshit 15 verse 16 says El Shaddai is talking to Abraham right now, right?
All right. And the word says, then the fourth generation, they will return here from their iniquity. Punishment for iniquity of the Amorites is not yet to come.
So Yahuwah is judging a nation for not keeping Torah, right? For lawlessness, right? Judges 11 verse 21. Let's read that.
And it says, and Elohim of Israel gave Sinah all his people the hand of Israel, and they struck them. So Israel took possession of all the land of the Amorites and inhabitants of the land.
Wait a minute.
And
Israel took possession of all the land of the Amorites and the inhabitants of that land. So Yahuwah is using Israel as his battle axe, weapon of war, to spew these nations that's in Yahuwah's land that is not keeping his Torah anymore, that have abandoned his ways and are in wickedness, right? Verse 22.
Ain't they coming back to do that? Ain't Yahuwah coming back to do that again?
Yeah, he's gonna do it again.
Mm-hmm. And thus they took possession of all the borders of the Amorites and Amran to the Jacob and from the wilderness of Yarden.
Okay.
And
So
now
notice the borders. Notice where Yahuwah's land is, right? All the borders of the Amorites, from Arnon to Yabbo, from the wilderness of the Jordan. And we know Jordan, that's where the Edomites dwell, and everybody. So all this is his region, is what I want y'all to get. All of this is his borders, is in that Levant region. Go ahead.
And now Elohim of Yasharal, has driven out the Amorites from before his people, Yasharal. Should you then possess it? Whatever Chemosh, your mighty ones, give you to possess, do you not possess it? And all that which Yahuah your Elohim takes possession of before us, we possess.
So notice that. So notice you have Yahuah El Shaddai, the firstborn son of El, now going to war with one of his brothers, which is Chemosh, right? The Elohim, or the mighty one of the Amorites. And they're going to war now because, again, Chemosh went off, got them doing all kind of wicked stuff. And now they were able to abide in Yahuwah's land for a while, as long as they was exalting El at first. But when they went off, start doing all this wickedness, now Yahuwah Jr., right? Yahuwah of hosts is coming in with his people to destroy and spew them out of his land, right? And notice he addresses Chemosh as a god, not as some figment of people's imagination or some idol of wood and stone. This is an actual mighty one, right? This is an angel or a god that rules over the Amorites. And he's saying Chemosh gave you a possession of your own land, right? Now, if Yahuwah brings us in to destroy you and possess it, guess what? Then it's ours now, because they know how this works. That's how the Amorites came in other places, right? They went in with their power behind them, helping them to destroy all these other nations. And then some other son of El rises up with his people and challenges them, and then they take over the land and so forth. So, but this original land, what we talking about right here, this is Yahuwah's land. And he allowed these Canaanites to dwell there, even though they were dwelling there illegally at first, because Canaan didn't go to his portion, right? He wanted to dwell in Shem's land. And now they rightfully getting put out because of sin, though, right? Because of transgression or iniquity. So this is called the rules and codes of conduct to remain in Yahuwah's land, right? Let's hear what he has to say. Leviticus 18:24.
And it says, do not defile yourselves with all these, for by all these are the nations defiled, which I am driving out before you.
So the nations that were dwelling in my land before, they were doing what I told them to do, but then they defiled themselves, right? By these things that I'm destroying them for. And you look and you see these defilements, and you, Israel, don't do these things, because for this reason, I'm driving them out, not because they're Amorites, not because they're Canaanites, but because of their works, right? Because of the sin and the iniquity that they're committing, I'm driving them out before you. Verse 25.
And it says, thus the land become defiled, therefore I punish it for its crookedness, and the land vomited out its inhabitants.
The land vomited out its inhabitants, right? So notice their sins defiled themselves, and also caused the land to become defiled. And Yahuwah has a problem with his land being defiled. He ain't gonna allow his land to be defiled by people. So when they start doing that, he spews them or vomits them out of the land, right? And you're gonna see how he gets that done. Verse 26 to 28.
And it says, but you shall guard my laws and my right rulings, and not do any of these abominations, the native nor the stranger who sojourns among you, because the men of the land who were before you have done all these abominations, and thus the land became defiled. So let not the land vomit you out for defiling it, as it vomit out the nations that were before you.
So look how Yah's he's loving Israel, warning them, like, look, I'm using you to vomit these people out of my land, but you could become vomited out too, Israel, if you do what they do. So don't follow their works, right? Don't follow the examples that they did. You keep my covenant and keep my laws. Verse 29 through 30.
And it says, for whoever does any of these abominations, those being who does them shall be cut off from amongst their people, and you shall guard my charge, so as not to do as any of these abominable laws which were done before you, so as not to defile yourselves by them. I am Yahuwah the Elohim.
Cain, right? So he's like, I'm Yahuwah, your Elohim. Don't follow no other gods. Don't do none of their practices and their laws. Do what I tell you to do, Israel, and you will remain in the land. All right. Deuteronomy 18 and 12.
And it says, for all For all that does these things are abomination unto Yahuwah, because these abominations, Yahuwah the Elohim does drive them out from before thee.
Okay. So notice, y'all. Notice that it ain't because they're Hamites that Yahuwah said, "Get the heck up out of here, you Hamites!" Right? It ain't that type of situation. It's because of their abominations, their laws, their wicked practices. Right? Verse 13 through 14.
And it says, "Thou shalt be perfect with Yahuwah the Elohim, for these nations which thou shalt possess, hearken unto the observer of times and unto the diviners. But as for thee, Yahuwah the Elohim have not suffered thee so to do."
Cain. So notice he's telling you these nations here were practicing witchcraft, divination, observer of times, all this stuff, right? And he's like, I don't suffer you to do those things. I haven't permitted you to do those such things, Israel, as these nations have done, right? But you're going to possess them because you're going to guard my covenant. Leviticus 20:22. Wa'ikra 20, verse 22.
And the word says, "Ye shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my judgments and do them, that the land whether I bring you to dwell therein spew you not out. And ye shall not walk in the manners of the nations which I cast out before you, for they committed all these things, and therefore I abhorred them. But I have said unto you, ye shall inherit the land, and I will give it unto you to possess it, and the land that floweth with milk and honey. I am Yahuwah the Elohim, which I separated you from other people."
I've separated you from other people, Israel. You're not permitted to worship the gods of the nations, the other 70 sons of El. You're not permitted to do any wickedness or any kind of enchantments and witchcraft, none of that stuff. That's what defiled the land. All right. Numbers 35, verse 33.
And it says, "So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defiles the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it."
So the only way the land to be cleansed, see, so notice when they was in Yahuwah's land, they was shedding blood, offering sacrifices of their children to these deities that went off, right? These sons of El that went off. Now they requiring human sacrifices and all kind of stuff for them to give them, the power to be fruitful or crops to be grown and all this stuff. So he's telling them that defiled the land. So now the only way for it to be cleansed is blood that was shedding. Blood, innocent blood, has to be shed. So you're going to kill all them and lay their bodies dead in this land to purify the land from his wickedness, right? That's why he permitted them to kill them all, because that's the only way Yahuwah's land will be cleansed from those who committed these wicked acts of killing innocent blood. An eye for an eye, right? 2 for 2. Psalms 106:37.
And it says, "And ye that sacrifice their sons and their daughters unto devils."
They sacrifice their sons and their daughters to even devils. That means the children of the fallen angels that made it with women. They were sacrificing even to these demonic spirits. Verse 38.
"And shed innocent blood, even unto the blood of their sons and their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto them unto idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood."
So you see, it was the innocent blood of their children that they sacrificed that polluted Yahuwah's land. Deuteronomy 9, verse 4.
And it says, "Speak not thou in thy heart after Yahuwah the Elohim has cast them out from before thee, saying, For my righteous Yahuwah has brought me into it to possess this land. But for the wickedness of these nations, Yahuwah does drive them out from before thee.
So it's not
For thy
because of your
righteousness,
righteousness, Israel. So remember, we think, because we the righteousness of Yah, we his people. That's why. No, he's like, it's because of their wickedness. So who's to say that if they were keeping Yahuwah's laws, that he would he even have casted them out of the land? You know what I'm saying? Because he's saying, I'm only removing them because they broke my covenant. They wasn't keeping my law, statutes, and commandments. So don't think Israel's because you just this wonderful people and my righteousness is with you that why you coming in here. It's because of their doings. Their unrighteousness is why. Verse 5.
And it says, not for thy righteousness or for the righteousness of thy heart does thou go to possess their land, but for the wickedness of these nations, Yahuah the Elohim does drive them out from before thee, and that he may perform the word with Yahuah swear unto thy fathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob.
So that's how just Elohim is. He's like, okay, Abraham, I promise you this land, which is rightfully yours because you are the descendants of Shem and you are my lot and my inheritance that need to dwell in my domain, right? Where I govern my landmass. But I'm a righteous El, so the Amorites, I've let them dwell there, but now they've caused iniquity and sin, and I'm giving them space to repent. I get as a certain measure I have, right? That I have for them. But when that glass becomes full, right, then now my wrath is going to be poured out. You know what I'm saying? And then they're going to get spewed out my land. They had a time to repent, but at this appointed time, if they have not repented, they get spewed out, and I bring a nation in there to destroy them, to run them up out of my land. And you, Israel, are my battle axe this time, because now you are my nation that I'm bringing in, and I'm fulfilling my oath to Abraham, all right, to Isaac, to Jacob. Leviticus 26. Leviticus 26, and we're going to read 21 to 30.
And if thou walk contrary to me and refuse to obey me, I shall bring you 7 times more plagues according to your sin, and the wild beasts among you, which shall berave you as in your children, brave you of your children, and I shall cut off your livestock and make you few in numbers, and your highways shall be deserted. And if you are not instructed by me by these, but walk contrary to me, then I will also walk contrary to you. I myself shall strike you 7 times for your sin, and I shall bring you against you a sword, executing the vengeance of my covenant. You shall gather together your cities, and I shall send pestilence among you, and you shall be given unto the hands of your enemy. And when I have cut off your supply of your bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in one oven, and they shall bring back to you a bread by weight, and you shall eat and not be satisfied. And in spite of this, you do not obey me, but walk contrary to me, then I shall walk contrary to you in wrath, and I myself shall punish you 7 times for your sins. And you shall eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters, and I shall destroy your high places and cut down your sun pillars and put your carcasses on the carcasses of your idols, and my being shall loathe you.
Okay, so this is the punishment of iniquity of Israel, just like there was a punishment of the iniquity of the Amorites before they got spewed out. He's warning them, like, I'm going to punish you just like this, all right, for your iniquities. Leviticus 26, 31 through 35.
All right, and it says, and I shall turn your cities into ruins and lay your set apart places waste, and not smell your sweet fragrance. And I shall lay the land waste, and your enemies who dwell in shall be astonished at it. And I shall scatter you among the nations and draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be deserted and your cities ruined. And the land enjoy its Sabbath as long as it lies waste, and you are in your enemy's land. Then the land will rest and enjoy its Sabbath, and as long as it lies waste and rest, for the time it did not rest on your Sabbath when you dwelled it.
So they stopped in it. Right. So they stopped keeping the Shabbats, right? They stopped keeping the land Shabbats. They just messed up everything. So everybody that was in the land had to guard this. They had to keep these things to dwell or remain in the land. So the Amorites were doing these things at first, but then they went off, right? And now Yahuah is bringing Israel in. Now, I want to give this last example. We got to read this because now we're going to talk about the kingdom of Assyria. I want you to see an example of some people who dwelled in Yahuah's land that were Gentiles, heathens. But notice what they do, right? How are they able to dwell here? Let's look at 2 Kings 17:13.
All right. And it says 13 through 18. And Yahuah warned Israel and Yehuda throughout all his prophets and every seer, saying, Turn back your evil ways and guard my commandments and my laws according to all that the Torah which I commanded your fathers, of which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. But you did not listen and hearken and harden their necks, like the necks of their fathers, who did not put their trust in Yahuah the Elohim, and rejected his laws and his covenant that he had made with their fathers, and his witnesses which he had witnessed against them, and went after worthlessness and became worthless, and after the nations who were all around them, of whom Yahuah commanded them not to do like them, and they left all the commandments of the Elohim, and made for themselves a molten image, 2 calves, and make an Azareth, and bowed themselves to all of the host of heavens and served Baals.
Who's all the host of heavens and Baal?
The 70 sons.
The 70 sons. So remember, the nations were allowed to worship them by the lot that was inherited by, but Israel was never supposed to. But look at what they're doing, right? Verse 17.
Cause their sons and daughters to pass through the fire and practice divinations of sorceries, and sold themselves to do evil, and in the eyes of Yahuah provoked him. And Yahuah, very enraged with Israel, and removed them from his presence. None was left but the tribe of Yehuda alone. And Yehuda also did not guard the commandments of Yahuah the Elohim, but walked in the laws of Israel, which they made.
Man-made laws.
No, man-made laws. Okay. Yehuda also did not guard the commandments of Yahuah the Elohim, but walked in the laws of Israel, which they have made. And it says, and Yahuah rejected all the seeds of Israel and afflicted them and gave them into the land of the plunderers, and he had cast them out from his presence.
So notice, Israel worshiping the other 70 sons of El, the host of heaven and Baal. They doing sorcery, divination, right? They're sacrificing their children to Molech and all kind of stuff, right? And now they even creating their own man-made laws of their own righteousness, right? Which is called the oral laws. It's what we see the Pharisees was doing. So this all made Yahuah reject them and gave them into the hand of the plunderers, which is the Gentiles or the Assyrians that's about to come and spew Israel out the land. 2 Kings 17, verse 13, 21. 21, and we're going to read the Assyrians, because the Assyrians came into the land spewing Israel out. Now let's see what took place here. 2 Kings 17, verse 21.
For he tore Israel from the house of David, and they made Jacob. They made Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, sovereign, and Jeroboam drove Israel from following Yahuah, and made them commit a great sin. And the children of Israel walked in the sins of Jeroboam, which he did, and they did not turn away from them. And Yahuah removed Israel from his presence, and as he spoke by his servants, the prophets. So Israel was exiled from the land of Assyria, as it is this day. And Assyria relentless.
So they resettled.
Resettled Samaria. The sovereign king of Ashur brought the people from Babel, and from Cathra, and from Ara, and the Hamath, and what is it?
Sepharium? Yeah,
Sepharium. Okay, and placed them in the cities of Samaria, instead of the children of Israel, and they took possession of Samaria and dwelt in the city.
So Assyria is taking possession. Notice Assyria is spewing Israel out the land, and now they taking possession of the land. Are y'all seeing what's going on? Just like Israel spewed the Amorites and everybody out the land and took possession of Yahuah's land, That's what's going on right here with the Assyrians, right? Verse 25 to 26.
And it says that it came to pass, it came to be that the beginning of their dwelling there, that they did not fear Yahuah, and Yahuah sent lions among them, which were killing among them. And they spoke to the sovereign of Ashur, saying, the nations whom you have removed and placed in the cities of
Samaria,
Shomeron, do not know the right ruling of Elohim of the land, and he has sent lions among them, and see that they are slain among them, because they do not know the right ruling of Elohim of the land.
So notice, they don't know the laws of Yahuah in the land. So Yahuah is sending lions and wild beasts to eat them up and kill them and everything, because they're not keeping Torah. You got to keep Torah in Yahuah's land in order for you to dwell there, right? If you don't, he got things to kill you off. That's how he rolls. That's just how it is. That's the laws. And he told Israel the same thing before they came into the land. He said, look, these are my laws before you come into my house. When you come into my house, there's rules and regulations to remain in my house. If you forsake those rules, you will be kicked out of my house. And somebody else will be replacing you, Israel. You understand? That's how he works. So now Assyria is doing it to Israel. They just got finished doing it to the Amorites. Israel did. Now they getting it done to them because they didn't listen. They did the same thing the Amorites did, right? Verse 27 through 33. So what do they do, right? Let's find out, what did the Assyrians do? Because they like, look, man, we get killed off, man. We need to figure out what to do. We need to find out these right rulings of the Elohim of the land. Verse 27.
And it says, the sovereign of Ashur commanded, saying, send one of the priests whom you exiled there, and go there. Let him go and dwell there, and let him teach them the right ruling of Yahuah of the land.
Wait a minute.
One of the priests.
So Israel is exiled. They sent Israel to Assyria. That's the land of their captivity. And he's saying, hey, go get one of them priests from over there in Assyria that we exiled from here. And we need him to come teach us Torah so we can remain here in this land. Verse 28.
All right. Verse 28. And it says, and one of the priests whom they had exiled from Shemron, Sumerian, came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how to fear Yahuah. But every nation were making mighty ones of its own, and put them in the houses of the high places where Sumerian had made, and every nation in the cities where they dwelt. And the men of Babel made sackcloth, or Succoth, Bina. Yeah, I'm sorry. The men of Babel made Succoth, Bina, and made of Kuth, made of Nagel, and the men of Hamath made Ashima, and the Nuites made Nebaz and Tartics, and the Shafarites burnt their children in the fire of
Adamalek or Molech.
Adamalek and Amalek, and the mighty ones of the Seraphim. And they also feared Yahuah. And from every class they made for themselves priests of the high places, who offered for them the house of the high places. They were fearing Yahuah, and they were serving their own mighty ones, according to the ruling of the nations from among whom they have been exiled.
So notice they doing the mixed worship, right? They worshiping El Yahuah, El Shaddai, right? And they're worshiping the other 70 sons of El and so forth. So notice what they're doing right now, right? They're mixing the worship. So they're learning the fear of Yahuah, but they're also still paying homage to their deities or their gods. Are y'all paying attention to what's going on here? So they understood the fear of Yahuah. So I want y'all to get that they were keeping Torah. They had a priesthood, but it wasn't a Levitical priesthood. So what priesthood is before Levitical priesthood that they're operating in to serve Yahuah? How are they doing offerings and all this to Yahuah if they're not Levite priests? What kind of priesthood are they in this? Anybody know? What priesthood is being officiated to serve El Shaddai, Yahuah Jr.? How is it being done? So y'all remember, the only priesthood that is outside of Levites is the Melchizedek priesthood, right? They have to officiate through that priesthood to be able to offer these sacrifices. They are not Levite priests. They made themselves, they had priesthood among themselves to be able to do this. The Levites just taught them the instructions of the Torah on what to do, right? They didn't have the laws of Yah. So they had to have the Levite priests to teach them, so then they can officiate and operate in a priesthood, which is not a Levite. You have to be a son of Aaron to be a Levite, right? Let's read 34 through 41. It says, to this day, they are doing according to the former rulings. They are not fearing Yahuah, right? They're not fearing Yahuah, nor do they follow their laws or their right rulings or the Torah or the command which Yahuah had commanded the children of Jacob, whose name he made Israel, right? With whom Yahuah had made a covenant and commanded them, saying, do not fear the other mighty ones or gods, nor bow down to them, nor serve them, nor slaughter or sacrifice to them. But Yahuah, who brought you up from the land of Mizraim, Egypt, with great power, with an outstretched arm, him shall you fear, and to him shall you bow yourselves, and to him shall you slaughter or sacrifice to, and guard to do forever the laws and the right rulings and the Torah and the command which he wrote for you, and do not fear other gods or other mighty ones. And do not forget the covenant that I have made with you, and do not fear other gods or mighty ones, but fear Yahuah, your Elohim, so that he delivers you from the hand of all your enemies. And they did not obey, but did according to their former rulings. So these nations were fearing Yahuah, right? These Assyrians and all these nations that was in Yahuah's land were fearing Yahuah and serve their carved images, both their children and their children's children, as their fathers did. They are doing to this day. So they started doing the mixed worship that got the Amorites spewed out by making these images of wood and stone that is not God's. So y'all had a problem with them creating idols, right? Which Nimrod was the first one to teach that at Babel, right? Would cause them not to worship the powers that were over them, which was the 70 sons of El. They start worshiping these wood and stone and the demon spirits of the fallen ones and their giants that died, their spirits that would inhabit or be behind these little wood and stone deity things that they would worship. All right. So this was the problem. This is why they got in trouble too. So these are household teraphim or gods of wood and stone that they would do and worship, right? And this is, again, what's caused the land to be defiled. Wisdom of Solomon 13:10 says, but miserable are they, and in dead things is their hope, who call them gods, which are the works of men's hands, gold and silver to show art in and resemblance of beasts, or a stone good for nothing, the work of an ancient hand. But that which is made with hands is cursed, as well as he that made it. He, because he made it, and it because being corruptible, it was called God. For the ungodly and his ungodliness are both alike hateful unto Elohim. For that which is made shall be punished together with him that made it. Therefore, even upon the idols of the Gentiles shall there be a visitation, because in the creature of Elohim they are become an abomination and stumbling blocks to the souls of men, and a snare to the feet of the unwise. For the devising of idols was the beginning of spiritual fornication, and the invention of them the corruption of life. So you see, this was spiritual fornication, even among the other 70 sons that were ruling over the Gentiles. When they start making these carved stone, they were no longer paying homage to the powers that were ruling over them, but they gave it to these little, these stones. So this was a problem, and he told Israel, don't do these things. Right? This was spiritual fornication. Wisdom Solomon 14:13, for neither were they from the beginning, neither shall they be forever. For to know thee is perfect righteousness, yet to know thy power is the root of immortality. For neither did the mischievous invention of men deceive us, nor an image spotted with diverse colors, the painter's fruitless labor. the sight whereof enticed fools to lust after it. And so they desire the form of a dead image that have no breath. Both they that make them and they that desire them and they that worship them are lovers of evil things and are worthy to have such things to trust upon. For the potter tempering soft earth fashioneth every vessel with much labor for our service. Yeah, the same clay he maketh both the vessels that serve for clean uses and likewise also as such as serve to the contrary. But what is the use of either sort? The potter himself is the judge. Psalm 15 verse 8 says, in employing his labors lewdly, he maketh a vain god of the same clay, even he which a little before was made of the earth himself, and within a little while after returneth to the same, out when his life which has lent him shall be demanded. Notwithstanding, his care is not that he shall have much labor, nor that his life is short, but he striveth to excel goldsmiths and silversmiths, and endeavors to do like the workers of in brass, and counteth it his glory to make counterfeit things. His heart is ashes, his hope is more vile than earth, and his life of less value than clay. For as much as he knew not his maker, and him that inspired into him an active soul and breathed in a living spirit, but they counted our life a pastime, our time here market for gain. For say they, we must be getting every way, right? Though it be by evil means, we got to get it. For this man that of earthly matter maketh brittle vessels of graven images, knoweth himself to offend above all others. This is a capital offense against Elohim, right? To make these images. And all the enemies of thy people that hold them in subjection are most foolish and are more miserable than the very babes. For they counted all the idols of the heathen to be gods. These are idols of wood and stone to be gods, which neither have the use of eyes to see, nor noses to draw breath, nor ears to hear, nor fingers of hands to handle. And as for their feet, they are slow to go. For man made them, right? And he that borrowed his own spirit fashioned them. So you borrowed the spirit of Elohim to fashion something that is not even as power as Elohim, and you want to worship it, right? He fashioned them, but no man can make a god like unto himself. For being mortal, he worketh a dead thing with wicked hands. For he himself is better than the thing which he worshiped, whereas he lived once, but they never. Yeah, they worship those beasts also that are most hateful, for being compared together, and some are worse than others. Neither are they beautiful so much as to be the desired respect of beasts, but they went without praise of Elohim and his blessing, right? So this was what defiled the land also, bowing down to these carved wicked images that Yahuah Elohim had a problem with, and even the other mighty ones, the sons of El had an issue with, because again, it removed the worship of the powers that are greater or are higher than man, and they start worshiping something that was less than even man, right? So it was a whole issue, and this is what got them spewed out the land, right? So that concludes the lesson for today, Myshpacha. I know we went through a lot today, but we went through these things to show the origin of the original understanding of the Father, his first begotten Son, and the rest of the 70 sons of El, the nations that worship them, how Yahuah is the lot of Israel. Israel's only to worship him and not the other mighty ones, not the other 70 sons of El or the host of heaven, and neither were they to worship any idols of wood and stone, which none of them wanted to be worshipped. That's something that Nimrod created at Babylon. He was the first rebel, or the first antichrist that created these idols of wood and stone. And that same spirit of anti-Messiah is in the earth today, which with AI technology, which is a god of silver, copper, all this stuff to make this artificial intelligence that can speak now. It can taste now. It has feelings now. It can walk. It can run. So this is the beast system that's creating these idols of wood, stone, and all these other materials to be able to be like a human or even greater than a human. So you see what the enemy's plot is, but we're looking at the origin of where this all began, right? And showing how Yahuah knew these nations. He even allowed these nations to keep his Torah, but when they started to go off into worshiping devils and divination and idols of wood and stone and all this stuff, he spewed them out just as much, just as well as he did Israel. But any questions, Myshpacha, pertaining to the lesson? Somebody's talking, but they on mute.
No, I don't have any questions. Just like a good lesson. I just learned like a lot. So the Amorites were the ones that had like basically Israel first, correct?
Say it again.
The Amorites were the ones who had Israel, the possession of Israel first, right?
And they had possession of the land over there before Israel came into the land. Yep.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
And so much, and y'all had so much respect. In essence, he told Abraham that, look, this promise I have to you, your descendants won't have it into the 4th generation because I'm giving the Amorites ability to repent, right? And if they don't, then you're going to come in at the 4th generation to spew them out. But
wow,
yeah,
good lesson. I did have a question back, but let me see if I can find it. I wrote it down.
But yeah, so y'all see that this Melchizedek priesthood was before Israel, and it's still the priesthood we're under today, right? Because the Levites, they got corrupted, so their priesthood has been suspended for a specific amount of time, and now we're under the priesthood of Melchizedek right now, offering spiritual sacrifices instead of physical sacrifices, though, right? So we're getting the understanding of how Israel believed before the Jewish monotheistic mindset came into the forefront today of what we have in Christianity, and so forth, of El the Father and his sons and the nations and so forth. And Yah's not, you gotta remember, Yah's not racist, he's not none of that. He's gonna inherit all the nations, period. But Israel is his specific lot of inheritance, his firstborn. And they have a specific purpose in the earth. They're supposed to be the example for all the other sons to return back to El the Father, right? And the first begotten son of El is the one that's in charge, that he gave all responsibility to restore the earth back into proper function before the other sons went off and caused the sons of Adam to go off. So that's what it's all about. Next week we'll go further from all the way from Shem, going down to Abraham and so forth, to see how all this works. But yep. But everybody good? No confusion? Everybody all right? No questions?
I just wanted to they just make you understand when it says that he's not a respecter of persons.
Cain. Yep, that's true. Very true. Yeah, he accepts anybody that wants to walk in his righteousness. He accepts. He doesn't turn them away. But and he'll whoop them just like he whoop us. You get what I'm saying? He like, hey, Israel, you saw what I did to these Amorites, right? I would do the same thing to you if you want to do these crazy wickedness that they doing. So you see, yeah, he's not a respecter of person, even though we're his firstborn and a lot of inheritance, right? But Israel's a nation that he has to use to restore all things. So we have a covenant of mercy in the sense where we're able to be restored back, but it's still through the first begotten son. He had to pay a price to bring us back into our position in the earth, which we're in that process right now. Because if we're the light of the world to restore the rest of the sons, and we're now in darkness, that means the world is in darkness. So we've been charged, to be the example for the rest of the sons of Adam. And Mashiach is trying to restore us back. He has to get his own house in order first before he gets the nations in order. So that's why he's awakening us right now. We're returning back to the covenant. He's cleaning us up. And then once he put us back in position, then he's going to get the rest of the sons of Adam back in position. All right, so everybody good? We'll go ahead and pray out. Queen, want to pray us out?
Sure.
All right.
Oh, Abba, we just thank you for the lesson that went forth, Abba. We come now in Yahshua HaMashiach's name, just even thanking you for the breath that dwells within us, Abba, the understanding that you give us, Abba, through your word. We thank you for the mores and moras that are here that you have called to teach your word. We even thank you even for watching over us through this day. And we ask that you send your protection, your fiery swords as we slumber on tonight. We ask, dear Abba, that the words that have been sent forth, that we place them within our hearts, Abba, that we study them out, and that we apply them to our lives and get more understanding of the way things were back in the day as we go back onto ourselves and how things were supposed to be during ancient times. As you open up our eyes, Abba, we just thank you. We thank you for Yazi. We thank you for TJ and all the others who wanted to be here tonight. Abba, we ask that you watch over them as well. We ask that you continue to open our eyes, Abba, even when it doesn't feel good or it doesn't look good. But we just thank you that you are bringing us back to you and the understanding of the way things are supposed to be. In Yahshua HaMashiach's name we pray. Hallelujah, hallelujah, amen.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Amen.